Hi, I thought I'd give you a view of the Christmas tree this time. I'm going to talk to you about Loewenberg's ethical decision-making model. It's similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just in the way it looks and kind of the feel of it. Um, Try and think while we go over this about, a dilemma you've maybe faced at your field placement, or, if you were to face a dilemma there, how you might go about handling it. How does this hierarchy fit into things that you've experienced or might experience at your agency? So at the top of his hierarchy, most importantly, is protection of life. This hierarchy really helps us understand priorities. So, what we need to take into consideration when we're making a decision. Protection of life is paramount. It means that if you are having a conversation with your client and, obviously that would always be confidential, but then they tell you they're going to leave the office and go kill somebody, that's something that you would need to break confidentiality for and, perhaps put aside other ethical considerations like their right to self-determination, because as much as we get to make our own decisions, we don't get to decide that we'll kill somebody else. Um, so next on the hierarchy is equality versus inequality. It's important, obviously, we know, to treat people equally without regard for race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, etc. But we have to acknowledge that relationships are not always equal. It would never be appropriate for a social worker to have a romantic relationship with their client, even if it's consensual or if the client initially pursued the relationship. The roles are not equal roles. The social worker is in a position of perceived power over the client. Autonomy and freedom come next. So this is the client's right to self-determination. It's important, it's valuable. We want our clients to have self-determination. But just like in the earlier example, if they were to decide they wanted to kill themselves and they had a plan, and we would need to do something about that. So again, we'd put aside other ethical considerations. We'd put aside their confidentiality because we want to try and preserve life. And fourth is least harm. So this is pretty self-explanatory. As a social worker, we're charged with making decisions that cause the least harm to our clients. So this can seem subjective, but an example might be the removal of a child in child welfare. Our clients might consider this to be very harmful or a violation of their rights, but if we're doing it in the child's best interest, we may be, again, preserving life, and that would be the most important, paramount. Quality of life comes next. So we want our clients to have housing, we want them to have employment, we want them to have financial stability. We want them to have social support and family support, but this can't come before things like preservation of life. We need to remember that although quality of life is very important, it would be something that wouldn't be the very first thing that we would look at if we were trying to make sure that safety, safety is always paramount. So privacy and confidentiality. We talk about confidentiality constantly in social work. We have to do our best to respect confidentiality at all times. But the example I gave you earlier that I keep coming back to, if your client has a plan to kill themselves or kill somebody else or hurt somebody else or hurt themselves, we'd have to abandon that. We'd have to, again, put aside other ethical considerations, right? So, truthfulness and full disclosure. There's not going to be very many times when you have to put this aside. I mean, it's pretty much always a given that we want to be honest with our clients and disclose as much as we possibly can to them because it builds relationships. It's going to always be our goal to let them know what's going on and be straightforward. Don't sugarcoat things. They need to know what's going on. So although it's not at the top of our hierarchy by any means, it's something that, most likely we're always going to be able to consider. So in the next video, we're going to talk about the flow chart that's also depicted on page 30 that's going to help us make decisions as well. So once again, stay tuned.